In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, we are going to have some fun. So I did it earlier this week where I just was recording and I hit the Tankathon sim and I had to do a mock draft off the top of my head. And it's Leif's turn today. He has no idea. This is almost like the lottery, except it's like the lottery, but you have to make a choice, and Leif is not going to get 2 minutes in between because that would take a long time, and you guys don't want to have a 2-minute gap. But yes, let's have some fun. Leif is going to do his mock lottery based off the random Tankathon sim. He has no idea what to expect. I don't know. I'm going to share the screen in a second. Stay tuned. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe, the director of scouting for NBA Big Board, and my co-host is Leif Thulin, the guy that you all know. Leif has been killing it on the episodes lately. Our most popular episodes feature Leif, and that's why he is on the hot seat today. Again, he has no idea what to expect when I share the screen and put up the Tankathon sim. Leif, are you ready for this?
Always.
Are you sure you're ready? I mean, I know you watch more college basketball than anybody else, and we talk draft multiple times per week. But have you ever done like a live sim? I mean, we're recording it live, so you're not. I mean, you can't prepare for it, but by the time they see it, it won't be necessarily live. But are you prepared for this? Are you ready?
Yeah, I think I'll be ready. I've done enough mock drafts so far that I think even in the short span there might be some deliberation instantly in my head, but I think I'll be all right. I'll be able to elaborate some picks out.
Okay, all right. Let's do this. All right, so I'm going here. I'm gonna hit share screen. I'm gonna bring it up. All right. Let's do this. All right. Sim lottery. Oh,
Let's go.
I promise this was not planned. You guys saw it. All right. The first pick in the 2023 NBA draft, the Utah Jazz move up 8 spots. Leif, are you going? Who are you selecting at number 1?
I have never once gotten the Jazz to number 1. I've messed around with the Tankathon big board and mock draft function a million times, so that was wonderful. And without further ado, I am adding a Frenchman to help the front court that was recently owned by another Frenchman. But Walker Kessler will be the center. And all jokes aside, Victor Wembanyama, I think, actually plays more 4 for whatever team he actually is selected by. I think he plays the 4, so that's a perfect fit. And then you got an enormous front court featuring Lauri Markkanen, Victor Wembanyama, and Walker Kessler. I mean, I know myself and every Jazz fan would be ecstatic if they were to pull this off, but I don't think there's much deliberation here. Victor Wembanyama is the pick.
So Victor Wembanyama goes to the Utah Jazz. I mean, that's crazy. We definitely did not plan this out. I know the last time I did, Charlotte ended up number 1. All right, number 2.
Number 2 is interesting because you hear the Spurs have significant interest in Amen Thompson. But myself personally, I think number 2 belongs, and I think he belongs in a tier to himself, just a bit over Amen Thompson and Brandon Miller, who have tier 3 solidified to themselves. So I'll take Scoot. Scoot Henderson will be the pick for the Spurs. You get the floor general of the future. You have a guy that can make some of your contributors better already. I think a guy like Jeremy Suhan, I think a guy like Keldon Johnson could really thrive playing off the ball with the gravity that Scoot Henderson will draw with his prowess attacking the rack. He's just got some acceleration that you can't teach. You watch him play and you think a little bit of Derrick Rose or Westbrook or some of these like illustrious comps thrown his way. But I truly haven't seen someone with the power and acceleration, the speed with which they accelerate since Derrick Rose that Scoot Henderson makes me think of.
All right, so you got Scoot at number 2. The Washington Wizards move up 5 spots at number 3. I'm sure they would gladly accept that. And who are you selecting for the Wizards?
Now that's an interesting one because that franchise is a bit of a crossroads. So do you want someone to be your ball dominant guard with Bradley Beal? You know, who knows how long he's going to stay there. He's got loyalty inside his DNA. He's one of those guys who's going to stick it out, but he's got to be a little frustrated with the way this is going. I think I'm going to go with Brandon Miller here. Assume that Bradley Beal's still there, and now you add a scorer, someone that'll instantaneously make the team better. Whereas a guy, if you were to take Amen Thompson, Thompson would be someone that would have to navigate playing with Bradley Beal, and Beal would have the ball, assuming that he would be there, and Thompson is better with the ball. So I think you go both short-term and long-term. Brandon Miller makes more sense for the Wizards, in my opinion.
All right, number 4, the Detroit Pistons falling out of the top 3. Detroit, this is where it's tough right here.
So, okay, there's an interesting argument you can make here. If I were the Pistons, I would try to trade here in actuality. I know that's not what we're doing here. I just want to make that point of clarification. Detroit is the only team that I think you can make a legitimate argument that you don't necessarily want a Scoot Henderson or Amen Thompson if they're picking 2 through 4. And that would be if they're picking 2 or 3, Brandon Miller could be on the board. And that's who you'd lean towards because of need. However, in this case, you're not. So that leaves you, I think, you still have to consider Amen Thompson. You've got Jarris Walker and Cam Whitmore are the guys that come to my mind here. I will take Cam Whitmore of Villanova. I think Cam Whitmore fits the needs of a team that has their foundations in place. You've got Cade Cunningham running the point. Jaden Ivey is running the 2, who can also play some point guard in different units and slash effectively. Whitmore will run and gun with the youngsters. Jalen Duren's going to man the middle. And I think he fits the timeline and has the talent you typically associate with the number 4 pick.
Yeah, that you know, I don't even know what to say here other than that would be very interesting if this actually happens on draft night, because somebody would fall. I mean, I think the person that would be affected by this the most would be Amen Thompson. All right, number 5, it is the Houston Rockets. Imagine Houston falling to number 5.
I think in this case, you got to take the best player available, and I firmly believe that's Amen Thompson. It's not the most conducive of fits. You've got an electric athlete already in Jalen Green in Houston. You've got their best passers, their center and Alperen Şengün. You could run some interesting, superb athlete and not very good athlete pick and rolls between those and pick and pops. But I do think that you've got to take the best player available, and I think the fit won't be terrible once they really build the foundation, because Jabari Smith will get better. Tari Eason's an impactful player. I mentioned Şengün and Jalen Green already. I think they just need to be coached to be cohesive more so than they're lacking talent. And so you might as well add the best talent as well as a positional fits. I know Kevin Porter Jr. is there for those who could get annoyed of the omission, but I don't think he's part of the long-term plans as much as the other quartet of names I listed.
And his contract isn't guaranteed next season, if I'm not mistaken. But he was at the Ime Udoka press conference. So, I mean, that was wise for him to be there, especially if he, doesn't have a guaranteed contract and they could end up with the point guard that can possibly replace him. Very interesting. All right, number 6. You have another interesting choice on your hand. It's the Charlotte Hornets at number 6.
Wow, this is interesting because on my board, if I were to follow my board, I would take Ausar Thompson, who's number 6 on my personal big board. He could play alongside LaMelo Ball, but I don't love him playing the 2 guard. If I were picking Ausar Thompson and I were in the top 7, 8, I'd love him to be my point guard. That said, LaMelo Ball's had some injuries, and you've got the defensive potential to really elevate your team on that side of the ball, as well as the way that team plays is run and gun so much so. And with all these stellar athletes that they're developing that haven't quite cracked the rotation yet, Mark Williams really did well at the end of the year. LaMelo Ball, as I mentioned, Miles Bridges could be returning. He'll be suspended early in the season, but that's a core piece. You've got guys like Kai Jones, JT Thor, who are phenomenal athletes and that haven't quite figured it out. I think the way this team is built, you stay with the MO and take an athlete in Ausar Thompson. And while LaMelo Ball is injured, should he miss time, Osar Thompson can develop some confidence at the point guard position, and in the meantime, steady up the defensive troops for the Hornets.
All right, at number 7, the Portland Trailblazers.
Ooh, this is where it's getting interesting.
Hey, you're the man for the job here. There's nobody better.
Let's see. Let me think about this. So I believe the Portland Trailblazers have a very interesting decision to be made because they're guard heavy. So typically a team that would, often would be in the top 5. I understand they're 7th here, but I'll explain the rationale. You would typically not take a guard, but there are a lot of really good guards to be considered in the top 5. So at 7th, I think it makes it almost easier, but I don't know if you find a guy that fits your timeline, especially if Damian Lillard stays, as easily. And so I will go with Jarris Walker, who to me is still a difficult read because he's a talented, broad-shouldered, big wing who defensively should be able to play immediately. Offensively, I think he's more of a work in progress, and that works because you have a ball-dominant player in Damian Lillard. You've also got an ascending star in Anthony Simons and potentially another one at the helm in Shaedon Sharpe. At the moment's being, you've got Jeremy Grant, Nurkic. So this team has the pieces to potentially compete, but I just don't think they're really there. So you take someone who fits both the immediate timeline and someone that could fit the long-term timeline of a team that will grow together, and he can ascend offensively and defensively right away, contribute, as I mentioned. Jarris Walker is really one of my toughest evaluations. So I'm a little torn when I say that, like, I don't think he's got star value, but I really I haven't seen it because he played on the number 1 team in the country for most of the season. And then you're told, well, Jarris Walker, you don't know anything until you see him play at practice. And so we don't get to see practice. So I think he's really dependent on workouts, but when the going gets tough, I think if I were to put on the GM hat, I'm taking Jarris Walker at 7.
All right. When we return, we will go through picks 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. And let's see how Leif does. But let's talk about the Nissan Player of the Week. It's kind of tough. The season is over for prospects. So do you have a Nissan Player of the Week? Or should we just go with Jimmy Butler for...
That was going to be my pick for sure.
What did he have a couple days ago? Like 56 or something like that?
He had 56, and then he had a pedestrian 40 in a closeout game on the road.
Playoff Jimmy. Yeah. Jimmy Butler, I mean, just had a phenomenal week. And the 8th seed upset the number 1 seed. And Miami was a play-in team. And it seems like it's not even getting enough, I don't know, publicity in a sense for an upset. I mean, everybody seems to be just talking about Giannis's press conference, which I thought was great anyway. But the Nissan's Most Electric Player of the Week is brought to you by the all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Ariya. And we mentioned it is Jimmy Butler, who had a crazy week, over 90 points in 2 games. And the Nissan Ariya is electric. It's brilliantly fierce. It's fiercely elegant, stunningly powerful, elegantly powerful, and it delivers on duality. A combination of fierceness and elegance, beautiful but strong, the perfect SUV crossover. The 2023 Nissan Ariya packs pin you to your seat power and premium intelligence all in one electric vehicle. It is the all-new, the all-electric 2023 Nissan Ariya. It is the electric vehicle for people who love to drive. So shop now at Nissan.com. All right. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA and get on your way to being your best self. All right. Getting to know yourself can be a lifelong process, especially because we're always growing and changing. I know I've had to change because I'm a father now. And so being a father just kind of makes you look at things different. It feels like it makes me a little bit more sympathetic to other people because I see that someone's son. And therapy is all about deepening your self-awareness and understanding, because sometimes we don't know what we want or why we react the way we do until we talk through things. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It is entirely online. It is designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, second segment. And this is the second segment in this random mock draft. And I'll just repeat the first 7. We had the Utah Jazz, which is, Leaf's best case scenario. Leaf in the whole entire state of Utah's best case scenario, getting Wembanyama at number 1, Scoot Henderson at number 2, goes to San Antonio. Brandon Miller goes to the Washington Wizards at number 3. The Detroit Pistons select Cam Whitmore at number 4. Amen Thompson falls to number 5 to the Houston Rockets. His brother Asor goes to Charlotte at number 6. The Portland Trailblazers select Jarris Walker at number 7. All right, number 8. It is the Orlando Magic with the 8th pick. If it's up to you, Leif, who are you selecting at number 8 for Orlando?
That's another really interesting one because they have a nice foundation. Like Paolo Banchero, we've talked about numerous times, being the franchise piece. Franz Wagner on the wings, phenomenal piece. You've got guards that are not quite at the same level, but you have people to be encouraged about. So now the question becomes, do you draft a guard and hope he can complement the franchise pieces, or you draft someone that I think immediately fits? So I'll give you the 2 logical pieces that fit in my mind. Cason Wallace is one thought, and the other being Taylor Hendricks. So he doesn't go too far from campus, from UCF to Orlando. Now the question for me becomes, at that point, do you think Cason Wallace becomes a guy capable of playing playoff minutes right away? Because I think the team is ready to be in the playoffs, like Wendell Carter Jr., Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner. So I would go with Cason Wallace. And I was kind of deliberating in my head as I was speaking there. I would go with Cason Wallace, and I think you play him at the point guard, and you have at least a defensively oriented tandem of guards in between he and Suggs to complement if Fultz is healthy. Fultz can play with some ball playmaking skills and responsibilities, and you have a nice enough balance there, and it never hurts to have guard depth when trying to make the playoffs, especially when your front court is set. So I think I'd go with the guy I perceive to be the slightly better prospect in Cason Wallace, who also fits, should he start right away, a more of a positional need in the first unit than does Taylor Hendricks. But I do love the Taylor Hendricks idea of just staying in Central Florida, and think he'd be pretty phenomenal there as well.
So you're going Cason Wallace.
Mm-hmm.
All right. It's a tough one. You know what I mean? Like, I had a hard time doing it too because the best players are guards. And actually, I think on mine, I bumped Grady Dick up. I felt like it's weird because Orlando was not a playoff team, but I think I may even go a little bit more towards fit than best player available because I want to reduce some of the redundancy. All right, at number 9 is the Indiana Pacers. And who would you select at 9 for the Pacers?
Man, that's another interesting one because they have their franchise player or close to it. I won't say Halliburton's quite a franchise player, but he's just about there. He's on the par. Then you've got a guy who had very good rookie season. In fact, you got 2 guards that had very good rookie seasons, and Benedict Mathurin was the first one I was mentioning, and then Andrew Nembhard as well. So you're fairly shored up at guard, and that is the position with more players that really fit where this pick is. So now the question becomes, do you go shooter, and you could go maybe Grady Dick and play the same ilk as Buddy Hield? Do you go with a guy who could space around like Taylor Hendricks? But I've got one that you may not be super surprised by, but a couple listeners may be. I'm going with G.G. Jackson at number 9. I think G.G. Jackson is a star, personally. I think he's going to be a star. But also, who better to let him run and gun than having a point guard like Tyrese Halliburton, someone that they don't have the expectations of winning right away. Like, for instance, the Magic, I think, expect to be in the playoffs next year. I don't think the Pacers think they'll be there yet. They have an ability to bring him along immediately, but also without the pressure because they've got a very ball-dominant guard in Halliburton, who's a phenomenal passer and just a character guy through and through. And I think that'll allow G.G. Jackson to accelerate his growth process on a team that will be growing together. And that's very important in the context of winning in the long run. A lot of these teams that are trying to draft a star don't have the chance to win immediately. So if you're going to draft at 9 and you have a chance to get one of those type of players and he fits your positional needs and he fits alongside your best player, I think that's a win-win. So I'll go with G.G. Jackson, selects upside over immediate fit, which would be the Taylor Hendrickses of the world.
Interesting. Very, very interesting, because I feel like Indiana was a playoff team until Halliburton was injured. I mean, I think at one point they were in like 6th place. So I'm kind of curious to see what their game plan is for next year. Do they go for it? I mean, is Hill still on the team? I know they signed Miles Turner to an extension, but I can't figure out if that extension was to make sure that they were meeting the cap floor this year, because I know he got like a significant increase in salary. Did they re-sign him to trade him so they can get pieces in return? What is your thought process on the whole Miles Turner situation?
You know, I think it's a combination of both. I think both he and Buddy Hield were taking contracts that were probably rich for a team that was intending on competing them initially, so that allowed them to have cap for potential trades. And I think that was probably the logic behind it. But at this point, you kind of hit yourself in middle ground because they exceeded expectations, as you mentioned. But I think realistically, this team doesn't have the capacity to compete as much so in terms of like truly competing to win a round of the playoffs than do the Magic. I believe more in the Magic and the way they're built right now than I do the Pacers. So I would say the money spent was probably in hopes to make the financials work in a trade rather than have those guys get that much money in order for their franchise to win immediately.
Yeah, very, very interesting decisions will be made in Indiana. But if you are in charge, you're selecting GG, which I think me and you are like the only guys that are like all in on GG. And I got this article, this piece. It should be coming out maybe by the time this airs. If not, give it a day or two. It's a feature on GG where I interviewed him and just kind of talked about his background and what he's working on. Very interesting guy, and I'm a big fan of him on and off the court. All right, if you're looking to build a championship team, you know that it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With the eBay Guarantee Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. So just add your ride to my garage and look for the green check to know if the part will fit or you'll get your money back. Because just like sports, confidence is the name of the game. And when you shop on eBay Motors and with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it is easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. So get the right parts, the right fit, the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay's guaranteed fit is only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only, and exclusions apply. All right, last segment. We left off at number 9. And let's just go down the list again. San Antonio selected Victor Wembanyama number 1. Scoot Henderson went number 2.
Wait, no, the Jazz.
I'm
The
sorry,
Jazz got Victor Wembanyama. I got to be protective of my pick right here.
Yeah, my bad. Going too fast. The Utah Jazz selected Victor Wembanyama number 1. Scoot Henderson goes number 2 to the San Antonio Spurs. Brandon Miller goes number 3 to the Washington Wizards. Cam Whitmore climbs to number 4 with the Detroit Pistons. Number 5 and number 6 are the Houston Rockets and Charlotte Hornets, and they select Amen and Asor Thompson. So the Twins go back-to-back. At number 7, Portland selects Jarris Walker. At number 8, the Orlando Magic select Cason Wallace. Number 9, the Indiana Pacers. You know what? Because I know how much you love Gigi, so it's just easy for me to think Utah Gigi. At number 9, the Indiana Pacers select Gigi Jackson. All right. Number 10 is the Dallas Mavericks. If you're Dallas,
I think the Dallas Mavericks have a perfect shoe-in fit right here, and it's Taylor Hendricks. Taylor Hendricks, I think, is the guy that if Luka Doncic, you see this in football occasionally where the quarterback says, hey, I want this guy. The most notable one that I can think of right now is Patrick Mahomes texted some coaches and GMs. He said, I want Clyde Edwards-Helaire with the last pick of the first round a few years ago. I think Luka Doncic would be all in about Taylor Hendricks if he had watched some college basketball. And the reason I think this is Taylor Hendricks is a guy who is a 3-and-D guy who can play the 4 and the 5 offensively and defensively. I think he'll be able to slide his feet and defend even better than just the bigs of the NBA. He'll shoot the ball very well. And I think he's got more athleticism and upside than maybe given credit for initially upon further watching of him. I think his athletic traits don't stand out like, oh my goodness, look at this vertical pop, but it's very functional. And I think he'll be ready to contribute right away. And that's when you've got a star, and not just a star, like a mega star like Luka Doncic. You want someone who's able to contribute right away. And I think the skill set and fit are very, very perfectly built for the way Dallas wants to play basketball.
Dallas is another team with an interesting timeline. I mean, they have a young star in Luka. Jaden Hardy is young, but I mean, it took injuries for Jason Kidd to have the confidence to let him play. And adding another young guy, I just wonder, would Jason Kidd be comfortable playing 3 guys in his top 6 or 7 rotation that are under 23 years old? I don't know how. I think Luka's like 23, but basically 2 guys that are 20 years old and younger in his top 6. I don't know how that will fare for Kidd. All right, number 11 is back on the clock. The Orlando Magic are back on the clock. And the last time you took Cason Wallace, who's next?
I think it's Grady Dick. I think you took a positional need in Cason Wallace in terms of, I don't think they're sold on Suggs as their franchise point guard. I don't think they can truly put enough faith into Fultz. So you took a guy who can immediately contribute and has upside long term. This time, I think Grady Dick fits the billing of what they need as an archetype. They need someone to space the floor for their impressive guys who handle the ball. Paolo Banchero struggled shooting the ball at the end of the year, but he showed all the traits to be a dominant number 1 in the NBA. So get him some shooting and positional size around him, and I think Grady Dick will be eased into a situation where he can play starters minutes, he can come off the bench and do what he does best, shooting the ball with a pretty athletic team around him. And I think his biggest weakness, I know I got a lot of people on Jazz Twitter that don't like that I'm not ecstatic over Grady Dick. I think he's a I won't say inept defender, but I don't think he's going to be a good defender in the NBA. So you put him next to players with really good positional size on the Orlando Magic. I think that really protects him in that regard. And he's got a very desirable skill set for what the Magic want in terms of his shooting at 6'8". And I think he'll expand his game a little bit, but he's more of a fit player rather than a guy you can build around.
Yep, I had Grady going to Orlando at number 8 in my mock. All right, number 12, another tough fit. It's the Oklahoma City Thunder. Like, I mean, where is a clear-cut path to significant minutes with the Thunder right now?
This is interesting because they're young, they're talented, and they've got depth at each position, and they don't even have their most coveted pick from last year in Chet Holmgren. So a lot of people, if they just watched today,
young depth, I mean, is anybody over 25?
Maybe Kenrick Williams.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But like that, you're scraping there. Let's see, who do I want here? All right, here's a pick that I don't personally have him this high, but I really like the fit, and I think the Thunder can afford to swing a little bit. I'll go with Jordan Hawkins. I think Jordan Hawkins is the best shooter in the draft. And I don't think it's just he's the best pure shooter, but I think he's the valuable skill set of that. He does it off movement. They've got the guys they want the ball in the hands of. They've got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They've got themselves Josh Giddey as a pick and roll savant. They've got themselves a guy like Jalen Williams from Santa Clara, who is really ahead of his timeline and scores the ball, defends, has the capacity to do even more. So why not add someone like Isaiah Joe with a little more upside to sprint off screens, be a little bit more on the ball as a six-man spark plug type? And you saw the success that Isaiah Joe was able to have, and why not try to replicate that and maybe hit a little bit more of a home run? Like that one, not to discredit Isaiah Joe, because I think he was a phenomenal addition and really played well this season. But that was a single deck home run. But what if Jordan Hawkins can be you hit that one to the second deck, and he fits their team really, really well, and he has upside beyond just a fit. So I'll go with him for the fit and because they can afford to take a swing.
All right, this is getting interesting. We're down to the last two lottery picks. Who do you have the Toronto Raptors and all the weirdness that's going on in Toronto? Who do you have him selecting at number 13?
I'm just going to go with the best player available. I'm going to go with Anthony Black. I like Anthony Black a lot. I think he's a very good defender. I think he's a guy who's got an eye for passing. I just didn't think he fit many of the teams that we just had selecting where I think he deserves to be in that range. So I'll take a guy in Anthony Black who fits a lot of what the Raptors have built around: length, athleticism, defensively oriented, big positional players. So I think they're going to change their roster around, but why not? Why change their philosophy if some of their roster pieces are gone? He may not start immediately if they're going to build around Scotty Barnes, which is the most likely case. But I think you can't be too picky when a guy like him is still around. I considered a guy like Keontae George, but I think Anthony Black is the guy I'd take there.
All right, last one. Somebody is upset because they fell outside of the lottery. Some agent has promised their guy a lottery pick in the recruitment process, and now that guy is outside of the lottery. Who is the last pick at number 14 in this episode for the New Orleans Pelicans?
Oh, man, the Pelicans are another team with positional youth and depth that makes it interesting. I'll go with Keontae George, and here's the rationale. I think you have as good a teacher for Keontae George as there is in CJ McCollum. I think he can mentor him into being a not supremely athletically gifted guard that is known to score the ball. But you know who's carved that path for 20 points a game for the past couple of years? That's CJ McCollum. I don't think they need him immediately to contribute. And I think you've got upside for him to score off the bench. And now I'm rethinking this a little bit because I forgot someone I like. I'm going to go with Dariq Whitehead.
Oh,
sorry. Let me restart. I still stand by that logic. I stand by that logic for Keontae George, but I realized that I forgot Dariq Whitehead, and I like that fit. Dariq Whitehead has positional size. He's got the shooting. And when the Pelicans are right, they have two guys that can get into the teeth of the defense at will. So you need to surround them with 3-and-D guys. And I think Dariq Whitehead's got more upside than he showed at Duke because he was battling injuries. He's a very, very good shooter, and he's someone that I think in a pinch could give you some ball handling when the Pelicans struggle with injury issues. He could help you out there, and he and Trey Murphy could be some snipers as support members to Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson. And my friend Andrew, if you're listening to this, you get one more Dookie for your second favorite team, your adopted team.
Yeah, I was great to say that is another Duke guy on top of having Trajan Langdon there also. Well, that wraps up a great episode. I know this was kind of fun, and you had to be on the spot. You had to think on the fly. Keontae George and Nick Smith Jr., sorry you missed the lottery, and that's just kind of how the cookie crumbles. I know in mine, Jarris Walker fell out of the top 14, and I got a little criticism for that. Once again, thank you, Leif, for this episode. This is the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, and we are out.